Hello, everyone. Dr. Ames here. This time, I'd like to talk to you about social entrepreneurship and innovation. Here's our definition coming from the French word. Originally, the word entrepreneurs and the people themselves really were defined from an economic perspective. And those early definitions revolved around the notion that it was someone who creates value by improving efficiency and effectiveness in the use of society's somewhat limited resources. But that was at the beginning, and that is somewhat morphed over time. And the way we look at entrepreneurship is a little bit different today. Entrepreneurs today, in general, are someone who identifies an opportunity, creates a venture to pursue that opportunity, and ultimately, possibly, upsets the status quo and makes previous products, services, and approaches obsolete. So that is really at the other opposite end of the continuum of entrepreneurial activity, something that basically contributes in an economic fashion, all the way down to the fact that you're creating something new that is so efficient and such a good product that it replaces and makes other previous products of the same types completely obsolete. Well, maybe we don't take it quite that far today. Entrepreneurs certainly pursue opportunities when they see them and they're able, and within their own skill set and interests and so forth. Now, here we can see clearly that all three sectors are involved when we talk about social entrepreneurship. If you look at this graphic, it really does represent all three sectors. And you see that social entrepreneurship is right there in the center and the area that all three sectors of human activity really overlap. So let me just summarize some of this information for you here. The private and public sectors really overlap in the area where public and private partnerships take place. And we also see competitive sector sourcing between the public and private sectors, a back and forth. The private and nonprofit sectors in the area of corporate social responsibility in particular, and then the private and nonprofit sectors also overlap in that they both use earned income strategies to provide revenue streams. Well, the public sector and the nonprofit sectors do overlap in that ambiguous area of third-party government. Nonprofits that are really supported and operated by the government, but they're not done by particularly individuals, like most nonprofits generally are. In other words, the areas in our society and those problems and challenges that are served by nonprofit that government either can't or refuses to service. But when we look at all three of these areas here of human activity, the sectors, there is overlap resulting in this area in particular of social entrepreneurship. And what this really tells us is that the activities that make up social entrepreneurship are interrelated and valid in some way in all three sectors, although they may not be perceived to have the same validity in each of the sectors. So it really does depend on your perspective. And when we talk about different perspectives on social entrepreneurs, well, we can look at the social enterprise perspective to begin with. This is someone who starts a business with a social purpose. So here we are talking about the private sector individual. And this coincides with the common usage of the term entrepreneur as we know it from the business world. It's virtually synonymous with the act of producing earned income ventures. And then we have the social innovation perspective. This is someone who identifies an opportunity, undertakes direct action to pursue it, and produces some type of change as a result. It's a much broader definition than the social enterprise perspective that we might see from someone involved in it from the private sector. And it really does say that social entrepreneurs are innovators and they are change agents, able to affect a society in some way that seems positive to them. And so the emphasis here for these social entrepreneurs, the social innovation perspective, is that the emphasis is on creating that wide scale change at the systemic level. Well, there are a variety of theories out there of social entrepreneurship and so forth. And these are pretty much analogous to the various theories that we study and understand about leadership in particular. We look at characteristics. We look at or really the traits of individuals who become social entrepreneurs. So that's the same thing we do when we study leadership. And those traits, those characteristics are things like creativity, autonomy, confidence, self-efficacy, energy, and the notion of hard work. Now, behaviors are things that social entrepreneurs do. And so they create change by revising things and updating things and tweaking them and so forth to make changes in efficiency and so forth to cause that widespread change and upheaval that they're looking for to change society in some way. And so these behaviors include seeing a mission, um, seeing a need, excuse me, and responding like an entrepreneur would respond to solve that challenge that that mission represents. So adopting a mission to create and sustain some type of social value is what a social entrepreneur would do from the viewpoint and perspective of the nonprofit sector. And it is an individual that would be recognized, able to recognize and relentlessly pursue a new opportunity to serve that mission that is so vital. And so in pursuing that mission, they are engaging in a process generally of continuous innovation, of adaptation, of learning, revising, changing, improving, and so forth. And so generally people who act this way are considered bold. These are bold actions, but they are limited to the resources that you have at your disposal. And so you can never forget when you're in this situation of doing something that's socially responsible like this, you have to have a heightened sense of accountability to the constituencies that you're serving so that you can say, this is how I did it, and so forth. And these are the outcomes that we've created in the along the way of this process. Now, when we look at the environment in which social entrepreneurship occurs, generally these are areas where government services really are either non-existent or very sparse. Society has just decided that for now, they are not going to address those problems and try and solve them from a governmental perspective of any type. And these are areas also generally where for-profit businesses are not operating. So you may have a social entrepreneur from the private sector do it, but it would be a little bit more unusual than it would say to have an individual from the nonprofit sector jump in here and do something in this area where social entrepreneurship occurs. Now, we also have some common demographic characteristics of people who become social entrepreneurs and so forth. Research tells us that sometimes these are immigrants. Sometimes these are the firstborn children of any given family. Sometimes they are people that have been traumatized by some event in their lives, and they feel a mission to solve some societal problem that is in some way connected to this trauma that they've experienced. And also, another demographic characteristic that causes people to do social entrepreneurship is that the various ages we go through as humans are milestone ages. At certain times in our lives, we may be prompted to give something back and so forth. And so this could be a variety of things. And then there are some common personality traits that we can look at that help us understand these people who become social entrepreneurs. They are characterized by, in general, things like innovativeness. They are oriented in life in general towards achievement. They very much like to be independent and act autonomously. They seem to have some sense of control over their own destiny. In other words, they know who and what they are, and they're pursuing it. They're willing to take some risks, but generally these sorts of people are going to analyze the situation and the context very carefully and make a reasonable determination if that risk is worth it or not. There is some tolerance for ambiguity, for trying to work in areas where there haven't been easily solved problems before, and they're intractable in many ways, some problems and challenges. They have a tolerance for things that take patience and a lot of effort to solve. And then they do have a general high awareness of community, what's going on in society, and they do have a heightened sense of social concern. So there are other theories of social entrepreneurship out there related mainly to the environment and a variety of integrated theories that we see out there. When it comes to the environment, really, these theories are stimulated by economic, political, cultural factors, things that happen to people that are beyond their control many times. The environment causes them. They lose their job or something like that. Or it could be that the environment, there's an inefficiency there or an injustice in the status quo, and people are able to exploit those inefficiencies or injustices in the status quo and actually do something new and create a product or a service. And so a good example of that is the rise of eBay. Uh, People always have wanted to trade and sell goods amongst themselves as individuals, but because large sums of money don't travel well or in the mail and so forth, it was very difficult for people to use a credit card or a debit card to have a personal transaction just between individuals. And so with the rise of technology and the internet and so forth, we had eBay develop, where we really saw the rise of consumer to consumer business in a large way for the very first time. Well, when we talk about things like these integrated models, these are just hybrids, different ways of doing things that we've learned from business, put together with practices in the nonprofit sector. And we do our entrepreneurship, adapting to the conditions and the context that are out there, and so forth. And there are many, many books on the various integrated models and theories related in particular to the non-profit sector. But it's really not our purpose in the class here to get into those much, other than to know that they are out there and that they do exist. Now, social entrepreneur as forces for good, this is something that we've understood for quite some time. And many social entrepreneurs who are working in that nebulous area for the common good, an idea, or whatever it might be, really are purposefully trying to do some good for the public, for the community, whatever it is. And so when we try and identify these people and analyze the nonprofits that they create and indeed what is their own behavior about, and the analysis leads us to call them, well, these are catalytic agents for change, these people who do this. They are extraordinary individuals that seem to be there in the right place and the right time. And we call them, quote, forces for good and so forth. And so some examples of this that are social entrepreneurs, acting in a manner in the public good and so forth. Habitat for Humanity, where people go out, regardless of their motivation for doing so, and build homes for those who are disadvantaged and may never be able to buy a home on their own, and just provide that home to them and so forth. Or the Teach for America Foundation, which really gets together people of skills who donate time and energy and go out and really do things to help their communities. So there are all sorts of common practices, we would have to say they're best practices, that the very best of these social entrepreneurship type of nonprofit organizations do. And so how are they acting? What are their behaviors? Well, they advocate and they serve. So they have a mission, they advocate for that mission, and they serve as many clients as possible in the furtherance of that mission, or the idea, the furtherance of the idea, whatever it might be. They make the marketplace work. It's just another way to do a transaction, something for something. It's not about revenue all the time when you accomplish something. It's about accomplishing the mission and how many people did you serve. The revenue is something that you need, of course, to sustain yourself, but you're going to measure yourself primarily in how much good did I accomplish this year? What did I do? And so you are inspirational. You act in a motivational sort of manner that interacts well and inspires the community around you and so forth. You become flexible and you master the art of adaptation as the operator of a nonprofit, being very adept at responding to change and seeing the chances, the opportunities to improve efficiency and so forth. And then certainly one of the best practices of all is shared leadership, where you create a sense of teamwork and group work, where everyone is pulling together for the same reasons. Well, we have examples here for you. I've got some of entrepreneurship like this. Social entrepreneurship is not just in the US. This is around the world, and it's practiced heavily in many, many places. So if you look here, here's the International Symposium for Social Entrepreneurship 2015. There is much more attention lately given to the social entrepreneurship we see happening in the US. And so more and more research is accumulating over time about it. There is a huge potential for more social entrepreneurship, particularly in those places in the world that are developing countries. They don't have the infrastructure and the things they need to really move into the modern age and be competitive. So there is a real potential in lesser developed countries that could really have quite an impact. Here's another organization, the International Society of Sustainability Professionals. That word sustainability should resonate with you if you've been studying nonprofits. That's what nonprofits are all about. They want to sustain their efforts into the future. It's not like business where you want growth of profits, growth of market. Certainly you want to serve more people in your mission and all of that all the time. But sustainability, being here next year and not having to worry about it, that's where you want to be. And then here's another one. Center for Social Entrepreneurship, the School of Management and Labor Studies, Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai, India. So what we have here is a school to teach you how to do these sorts of things. And so I put this in here because I thought it was incredibly interesting, and that you can learn how to do this if that was the sort of career you wanted, helping people, pushing ideas, doing whatever it is that makes you feel like you should be an innovator in the nonprofit sector. I should talk about Bill Drayton and Ahsoka, because Ahsoka and Bill Drayton both are pioneers in the things that I've been talking about. And a couple of other individuals here, Muhammad Yunus, and then the Grameen Bank. Now, I've got a couple graphics here to show you. Here's Bill Drayton, founder and CEO of ASCA. I'm not sure exactly the pronunciation. It may be Ashoka, ASCA. And here's a quote from Mr. Drayton. All the problems sitting there are invitation for you to be creative, make use of your skills and resources, and find a solution. And so it's incredibly interesting. He created this company. It's global in nature. And what they try to do is identify promising social entrepreneurships around the world, and then see if they can raise funds to support their efforts and help them out in different ways. So really what we're talking about here with Ahsoka and Bill Drayton is really venture capitalist, but he's really not a capitalist in this sense. He's a venture philanthropist. So what we see now, recent figures, I think these have increased somewhat, 3,000 Ahsoka fellows operating in 70 different countries. So that would be representatives of his nonprofit organization. 1980s when they founded it. They do startup financing for social entrepreneurship ventures, professional support services of all types, internet connections, business equipment you might need, computer terminals, the basics, printers, all of that kind of stuff. Providing you with connections, access really, to a global network of businesses who are doing other similar types of problems, working on those problems and so forth. You can learn best practices, you can get support and so forth, find out who is doing things that similar to what you want to do. It is definitely a platform for people who are catalytic agents, who are change agents, who are out there to change something about the world. So the claim is generally that Ahsoka and Bill Drayton really get the credit for bringing social entrepreneurship in a very visible way out into the public stage in an international way. Multi-sector partners across the world, that's really a global reach. And they are simply out there looking for this entrepreneurial talent, new ideas, but particularly those people who are looking to help solve the social problems that are out there. So they have run global searches and so forth, very much like venture philanthropist, providing funding, professional assistance, summary here really. But for those who really have a great idea, they're completely committed to it, they're ready to go, something like this organization can give you a launching into the worlds of nonprofits and help you get started and realize your dream to help others. Teach for America. These are some people who have had real success with the different sort of organizations. These are all people working in different nonprofit areas that have a connection to this organization. Drayton came up with the idea that there are these milestone ages in a life of an entrepreneur. And so if anyone can tell us what it's like to be a social entrepreneur, it has to be Bill Drayton. So you become an apprentice, maybe to begin. You acquire a certain amount of experience and skill in an area that has really resonated with you, that you're attracted to. And that's why you went there and maybe started with an internship that became an apprenticeship, that became something bigger over time. Launch. You've been thinking about some idea. It's the reason that you did this in the first place. And as you gain more skills, a little bit of experience, you start thinking about the things you would like to do. And you start becoming aware of the sorts of opportunities you would need to take advantage of to realize those things. And when you catch the right idea, you can launch something. And if you can make a go of it, then these organizations, in their very success, spread the fact that here's something new going on. It's working, and it's solving this problem. It's helping to solve this problem. And then the maturity. You look back on your work and say, I did it. Here's what I accomplished. Here's the amount of it, the breadth and depth of it, and so forth. Each of these cycles in any given person who has those traits I talked about of an entrepreneur, creativity, drive, an innovative spirit, a little bit of risk taking. Each of these grow in time and feed each other. And you end up maybe with a new product or a real successful nonprofit in some sort of social area that really does move society forward and help people. Well, here we have Muhammad Yunus and Grameen Bank. Now, Muhammad Yunus was a real pioneer in the world of microfinance, realizing that there's a real social problem in many places in the world, places like India, where if people could just borrow a small amount of money, not a major loan that you've got to mortgage your house for or have a credit card for, but a small loan, a micro loan, $100, $50, $25, depending on the situation. There's a real need for that. And Muhammad Yunus saw this need, and he became the pioneer, really, one to talk about in the field of microfinance. And what microfinance does is it provides small interest-free loans without collateral for poor people to start business ventures. And the vast majority of these loans have gone to women. In fact, over 97% of the loans they've made have gone to women. The beginning of this was a focus on coming up with a solution to global poverty. So many people have the ability to start businesses. They've also found that 97% of the loans are paid back. That is a recovery rate higher than any banking system in the world today for microfinance loans, 97% payback rate. That is just simply excellent. So using Grameen Bank, these methods are applied to various projects to alleviate poverty, different types of projects, different circumstances in 58 countries, including the United States, Canada, France, the Netherlands, Norway, India, Bangladesh, many places like that. And there was a debate generated by the entry of for-profit companies into microfinance markets. And it really made people think about what's going on. A for-profit company generally wants to make a little bit more than a nonprofit company would want to make, or if the nonprofit microloan company would want to make any profit at all. And so here we have competition, not just from other nonprofits, we also have it from the for-profit sector. But the idea is those for-profit companies coming in the microfinance industry, which is created basically by Grameen Bank and Muhammad Yunus, they're working in that social enterprise area where all three sectors overlap that I started the discussion with. So the question is not settled yet if this is going to continue. Right now, though, we can say that Grameen is very successful. They've got well over 2,500 different branches. They have around 20,000 employees. They serve almost 8.5 million borrowers. And they serve millions of borrowers in over 80,000+ villages. Villages. These are small little towns throughout countries that are generally underdeveloped. On any given working day, Grameen would be collecting an average of $1.5 million in weekly installments on money they've loaned out as microloans. He's put out a book, Muhammad Yunus, of course, called Building Social Business. And he really talks about the things that social business is all about, the types and so forth. But basically, social businesses are cause-driven. They have owners who may be poor themselves. It's not a charity. Costs have to be recovered, but it's not always all the costs. And they don't always recover all the costs through fees and the services they provide. Some of it's through donations, like any nonprofit and so forth. And then finally, there are different types focused on creating a social benefit. Goods produced have a positive social impact. So the very fact that Grameen Bank and Muhammad Yunus is going out there, searching out these entrepreneurs, trying to help them really in an effort to improve society in general for the societies and cultures that these people live in. So they are, in a way, still trying to do business to generate profits for some really worthwhile venture. Okay, folks, that's all I want to talk about this time. I'll talk to you again soon.